30 participants are on the call. That's one is that this webinar or webcast is in a no way to be construed as an uh, invitation, advice, or recommendation for any of you to invest in the stock market or to do any activities in the stock market. It is just for educational purpose and for the benefit of all of us to become a better investor. At the end of the day, for your investing related decision, we advise you to take advice from your financial advisor, and do your own homework. Secondly, as I mentioned, we are not going to discuss any specific shares. And if we are mentioning any shares, like for example, I gave a couple of examples of the stocks which I have in my portfolio. Those are only for, as an example, is to, give you some case study and to make you understand what was our thesis to buy those stocks and why we are still holding. But in no way we are recommending. Maybe if our view changes about those stocks, we may sell it tomorrow, and we will not know who has bought based on our discussion, and will not be able to, will not do justice. So those are only for, as an example for you to understand the case studies. And those investments we made 4 5 years back, so the fundamentals have changed, the thesis, the principle holds good, but the whole market parameters might have changed. So this is, you know the legal disclaimer which we had to make. And the finally, one important disclaimer is that any stock which we discuss there, we as an Aspire Cap, I myself as Kanaya Rathi in my personal capacity, or Pankaj Murarka in his personal capacity, or Renaissance, we may have interest in those stocks. So we want to make it very clear before the beginning of, because we manage portfolios. So in either in our portfolio or on our clients' portfolio, we may have some of these stocks. So that you should be careful. But any which way, we are not going to discuss any stock specific valuation or recommendation. So don't look for stock specific tips. As we say, tips are injurious to your or hazardous to your wealth, but try to take the principles of investing and learn from that, and then try to become a better investor. So that's what I had to convey before we start. So if you have any question before we start the 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 call, so please, Jay, you can unmute everyone for 5 minutes, and if they have any question, let's take them, and then we start the
What I have done is you have again had the power to unmute yourself. So anyone has any question can unmute themselves and can speak. No questions? No question means one thing. I mean, whatever Kanya said for last 20 minutes, no one heard, or you are pretty clear what exactly he said and you have no question. So it can be either way. Krishnan sir said, I could not understand the stuff, so forget about it. I am more interested in Pankaj's speech.
No, I mean, there is anything,
आपके लिए नहीं था, ऑडियंस के लिए था. आप रिलैक्स करें. आपके लिए नहीं था. Okay. So silence. I mean, Friday afternoon, mostly, I love to have a nap. How about you guys? I think जितनी शांति है उस हिसाब से ये लगता है कि सब wanted to have a snap or sleep. It's Kanhaiya who has disturbed all of us and said, no, you have to come in this. So in order to get some extra wealth, हम सब यहाँ बैठे हैं. If you can see, Uma is already on the bed, relaxing there. कब सो जाएंगे पता नहीं चलेगा. I mean, he's in that posture right now. Others seems to be sitting, but he seems to be enjoying there. Sir, you are on mute. If you're saying something, I'm not able to hear you.
मैं बोलूं मेरे लैपटॉप में काम चल रहा है.
Oh, okay. Oh, you are still actually making money. So he's actually making money sitting or sleeping there. So that's the objective. I can see some smiles, which is required.
So no, that's fantastic, Jay. I think I was absolutely clear, and I think my voice is properly understood by everyone. Now we are just waiting for Pankaj to dial in. I just spoke to him. He's just finishing a call, and he will dial in any minute. And for the tips, if you guys want, then you can call me later on. So that's
Sir, ये utilize करते time. I'm not an investor. I'm telling you. I mean, I joined because you said, Jaya, I need you for here. I just have a question. Whether tips work? I mean, for a layman like me, I don't understand investment. I'm a chartered accountant. But I don't understand investment. I don't do trading other stuff. So tips. I mean, most of these people like us works on tips. So what's your take? I mean, you are the stalwarts, right?
so I always tell people, that investing based on the tips is your first step towards becoming a long-term investor. And I'll explain to you how. So one day you will meet me and I'll give you a tip and that may work for you. The other day, I may be wrong. Then let's say I recommended you buy a particular share, you bought it, and then the share price, let's say, goes down by 2-3% or 5%, and you'll call me, Kanaya, what happened? I'll say, look, fundamentally the stock still remains there. I like the stock and I'll continue to hold. But you invested only for maybe a couple of months or weeks. You thought that I'll make a quick buck. But COVID second wave hit, which I didn't know also. And now your stock has gone down by, let's say, 15-20%. Now you cannot get out of that stock and you become a long-term investor in that. So that's the reason I'm saying that investing based on the tips and based on not having a proper professional approach to investing will not do any justice to your wealth.
I love the
Another example I give to everyone, that when we are sick, we go and see a doctor. We don't just take medicine at home. We go take our medicine from a doctor. We have a legal case, we hire a lawyer. When it comes to investing, everyone wants to take the shortcut. That it's not a shortcut. It's just that having that approach and casual approach, that investing without having a proper understanding of the market, without taking a proper advice, and exposing your capital to so much of risk that it is like being penny wise pound foolish, that in terms of making the money faster or taking the shortcuts, you end up losing the capital. So anyways, I think we are here to take more advice and the guidance from Pankaj. Pankaj is online now. So I would let Pankaj explain, how we should go about investing than myself. Pankaj, welcome to the webinar. First of all, thank you very much for your time. We are so grateful that when I recommended to you or requested you that, look, we have so many people who would like to understand where the markets are today, because the markets have gone up from the March lows to almost double. So everyone has a concern that if the markets are overvalued or it is a bubble. Secondly, the COVID second wave which has hit made people more perplexed as to what to do. Should we continue to stay invested? Should we take money out of the market? And what lies ahead in terms of the GDP, markets, and investing? So I introduced yourself before you joined. We made all the legal and SEBI disclaimer before you joined. So I think we can start straight away, get into the main webinar and our topic, and start with first taking the question on the concern which many of us have, if the markets have peaked or it is still overvalued, and what we should do in light of this COVID second wave.
You have to give him the right to as a co-host, otherwise he'll not be able to unmute himself.
Okay, just a second. Okay, I did it. Pankaj, you can unmute yourself.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay. Good afternoon, good evening, friends. Thanks, Kanaya, for the kind introduction, and good evening to all of you. So I think we'll straight away head to the point. I think you raised 2 or 3 points. I'm sure, and since the topic of discussion is outlook for markets, Indian equities. So we'll discuss that. We'll keep the format as I'll give a 15-20 minutes brief on my understanding and my views on market, second wave of COVID that you touched upon, and views on market both from a slightly more near-term perspective, slightly more medium-term and longer-term perspective. Short-term we can discuss, but short-term to किसी को नहीं पता है, मुझे भी नहीं पता है, honestly speaking. So we rather discuss things which I understand. And then we can open the floor for questions. I'll be happy to take questions and answer them to the best of my ability. So first, I'll just hit away with, since you touched upon the second wave. So obviously, I'm presuming most of you guys, audience are based out of Dubai or Middle East. That's what I'm presuming. But I'm sure you guys know all that, what's happening in India. So clearly, healthcare situation is bad. I'm in Bombay. Things are really bad. We're in the middle of a mess. But be that as may be, and we feel sorry for all that's going around. But when it comes to markets and economy, I think we have to take a slightly more medium-term and a longer-term perspective. Now, last March, all of us were new to the virus and the pandemic and all of that, because the last time world saw a pandemic was 1919. So because it did not have a precedence or history, so all of us had no idea where to benchmark or which benchmark or other crisis to look forward to figure out how this will play out. But now that I think it's been a year, so all of us understand the virus much better. So it's the second wave is, I think, very much a part of evolution of the virus. US and Europe have gone through the second wave. Some countries, actually, South Korea, if you look at it, is actually currently going through the fourth wave. So virus has its own life cycle, and virus will evolve through these cycles. We'll have to learn to live with that because even after vaccination, you can still get infected. All of us now have realized by now, and so on and so forth. So I think what's unfortunate in India is that we were, I think, completely unprepared for this second wave. All of us had become a bit, if I can say, a bit careless in that sense, and we had stopped exercising caution. And I think and as it is India, all of us know it very well, our healthcare infrastructure is extremely weak, and that is getting exposed at this point of time. It's unfortunate, but that is how it is. India, given the magnitude of the size and scale of the country, obviously our healthcare infrastructure is grossly underinvested. This is not something to do with this government or that government, but that is how it has been for the last 50, 60, 70 years. And some point of time in our evolution, I think we'll have to massively increase our investments into our healthcare. Now we have realized that. Otherwise, every time we face a problem or a healthcare issue, we'll have circumstances like the one we are facing. Be that as it may be, I'm sure by now you guys would have seen what ICMR and a couple of other credible agencies are projecting is hopefully this wave, second wave, should peak in India in first week of May. So we should hit peak infections by sometime in April, first week of May, and from there it should start tapering down. So by end May, hopefully the second wave should subside. Having said that, the fact remains that we will hit a third wave sometime towards the end of this year, 2021. So virus will have its own evolution. It'll have some impact on, meaning it has a bigger impact on healthcare. It will have some impact on the economy and all of that. But I would say that the outlook for markets remains constructive or positive despite that. Remember, last year when the crisis hit us, I'll give you one data point. So the bottom of the market was made on 24th of March 2020, and that was the first day of lockdown in India. So markets, always remember that equity markets are forward looking. Yeah, the peak of, and they because unfortunately human beings who participate in the market, they are not rational and objective. All of us are driven by greed and fear. The peak of the fear always marks the bottom of financial markets. When the fear peaks, that's when markets bottom out, and which is what exactly happened last year. The fear peaked on the first day of the lockdown, and which actually made the bottom of the market. And while economies were locked down all through last year, we've had one of the most ferocious bull market in equities globally also, and in India as well over the course of last 1 year. So I think be that as it may be, the point I wanted to make was, as far as the second wave is concerned, it's nothing but the part of how the virus will evolve, and we'll have a third and fourth wave. It'll have some short term. The bigger impact is on livelihoods and people who are put through hardships. It'll have some impact on the economy, but I think from a market's perspective, and it can have short term impact on the market, but from a slightly more medium term perspective, if at all anything, if markets correct because of second wave and all of these, then I think that's an opportunity for a long term investor to buy into Indian equities. So that's broadly on the second wave, meaning in terms of how I am thinking about it. Talking about markets that we're concerned about, obviously the one question which I keep getting is, most of the people have actually, people have not been able to, either they've missed the last year's rally or they've not been able to participate to the extent one would have liked to. And there's now a fear or apprehension because markets are up by 100% almost from the last year's low. So our markets in, as Kanaya alluded, there's one question comes out, are markets in a bubble or something like that, and so on and so forth. So first very emphatic statement I want to make is clearly, I don't think so equity markets in a bubble. And we'll discuss, I'll give a brief this thing on the market, and then I'll give you a broader perspective on the Indian economy and how at least we are thinking about it. And that will help us think about markets from a slightly more medium to longer term perspective, which is more important. Because I presume all of us are here to figure out, to create wealth, and wealth can only be created over a slightly more medium term, longer term. So one, as I said, I don't think so markets are in any sort of a bubble territory of any this thing. And given the fact that markets have had such a ferocious rally over the last 1 year, I think it's not a bad idea if markets consolidate in some sort of a range or spend some time around these levels. Or markets can correct by 5-10% in the near term. I have no idea about that, or what exactly markets will do over the next 1 or 2 months. But from a slightly more medium term or longer term perspective, I'm extremely constructive on equity as an asset class globally, and on Indian equities particularly. So, and just to put that in context, I believe that last year was an extraordinary year. Last year, Indian economy, most of the major economies in the world except China has had negative growth. India's economy FY21 will contract by something like about 7 to 8%. And to again put things in perspective, the last time India had a contraction in economic growth was in 1981. We haven't seen negative growth in India for the last 40 years. So that helps you put things in context in terms of what that means for India. Having said that, given the benefit of low base, this year we're going to have a very sharp rise in our growth, where India's growth, real growth could be about 11-12%, I believe, this year. It could be a percentage here and there, because it's really difficult to figure it out or pinpoint a number on that at this point of time in terms of how this second wave plays out and all of that. And so this is going to be an extraordinary year. But I think more importantly, I think there are few good things that are happening with the Indian economy. I'm sure many of you would recollect that even otherwise, even before pre-COVID, for the last couple of years, even pre-COVID, Indian economy was not in the best of the shape, and it was not doing that well. Our growth as it is was moderate because we've had multiple disruptive reforms, starting from demonetization to GST to some real estate regulation in India. And then last we had some sort of a mini financial crisis as a fallout of ILFS fiasco, and thereafter the blowout of Diwan Housing and Yes Bank and so on and so forth. And by the time we could recover or settle down with all of that, we got hit by COVID. I think I am pretty bullish on the outlook for Indian economy from a slightly, while this year will be a great year for growth, but the point I'm trying to highlight here or bring to the table for discussion is that even beyond this year, which is FY22, I and we as a team are extremely constructive on outlook for India's growth outlook from a slightly more medium term to longer term perspective when we look beyond this year. And that's primarily because we think all the disruptive reforms which the government did pre-COVID, we've taken the pain of all those reforms, but we are yet to experience gain of those reforms, which our view is will start emerging now, or which has in many ways started emerging, and which will be extremely beneficial for India. So we are now going to reap the dividends of all the reforms that we have done in the past, but we have not been able to, we've taken the pain of those reforms. For example, we have a now bankruptcy code in India, which was not the case until 3 years back. So until 2016, when the bankruptcy code came, if a company defaulted on loans or if a company went bankrupt, in India, we didn't know how to deal with that company, what to do with that company. The legislation that existed in India was something called BIFR Act, which dates back to sometime in 70s and all of that. Obviously, India and the world has changed from 70s. So when a company defaulted, the lenders didn't know how to deal with that. And as a result, in the process, we over the last 7-8 years, we have created a huge pileup of bad loans in our banking system. Now we have a very, I would say, reasonably robust legislation to deal with that, which effectively helps to deal with bankruptcies or defaulting companies at a much faster pace and in a much shorter time frame. So now we have a regulation in place, which effectively means we'll not again create the same ballooning effect of NPAs that we created in our ecosystem, in the last 7-8 years, which will not create that again ever again. So which will be very good for the entire ecosystem. And likewise, with every reform that the government has done, I think, be it the GST, be it the real estate bill, and some other reforms, I think we'll reap the dividends of that. More importantly, the two other things that while the last year was a year of pandemic, the good thing, apart from various other things, the good thing that happened was the government did not give up on its reforms agenda. So while economies were locked down, at least the government realized the significance and the importance of the economy, and they kept on going ahead with their reforms agenda. So one big thing which they did was this was conceptualization and implementation of this something called PLI scheme in India, where government has realized now that manufacturing is key for revival of growth in India. It's very unfortunate that, if you look at the global environment, then when it comes to textiles, Bangladesh's textile exports are higher than India. When it comes to electronics, Vietnam's electronic exports are higher than India. When it comes to auto parts, Thailand's auto ancillary exports are higher than India. All these economies are a fraction of India. They are a fraction of size of India. They are high cost economies. The labor costs in all these economies are anywhere between 2 to 4 times that of India. Yeah, and yet they have become sort of export champions, and their exports in their respective industries in which they have championed are much higher than India, which is very unfortunate. I think the government has realized that, taken a note of that, and I think they've architected and conceptualized and implemented this scheme of production-linked incentive, where they want to bring in this manufacturing back to India, or encourage manufacturing in India and build large-scale manufacturers. They want to build champions across all the manufacturing sectors in India, champion players, where the incentive scheme, the way it is designed, is the incentive is just given to 4 or 5, anywhere between 4 to 6 players in each industry. So those players will become significantly large, and that is how the manufacturing ecosystem has evolved in whole of Asia over the last 30-40 years. Because otherwise, the earlier plans of the government used to be, they used to announce a subsidy scheme or incentive scheme, and which was available to everyone, all in sundry. This time the government has realized that they don't have the resources to give incentive to everyone, and instead of giving very small incentive to thousands of players, it's better to give those incentive to 4, 5, 6 players, so that it becomes meaningful, and they become large players in that industry, and they become not only domestically but regionally and globally competitive. And I think government has seen a phenomenal response on that. And I think this is a very big game changer from a revival of India's medium-term, longer-term growth perspective. So the 2 or 3 big things which we are clearly seeing is, one, there is a significant change in, there is a 180-degree shift in government's approach to reforms. All the reforms pre-COVID were destructive reforms. They were disruptive. They were disrupting some economy or something or the other part of the ecosystem. GST was disruptive for all the medium and small firms, because they were, as it is, not paying taxes. Now they are forced to pay taxes, and so on and so forth. Post-COVID, the government has changed its stance, and now they are focusing on constructive reforms. They said, now it's been 5 years, 6 years for this government. We have done enough of disruptive reforms. Now our focus is on constructive reforms. And I think PLI is one such big game changer, where they want to help revive growth in India's manufacturing. And the good thing is that in each of the sectors, government has seen a phenomenal response. Our own view is that, and the way this whole PLI scheme is, that gradually the incentives gradually balloon up over a period of 4 to 5 years. So our view is that by 2025, when the PLI scheme is in the 4th year, this PLI itself can add something like about 80 basis points to 1% to India's GDP growth. And this is just the direct manufacturing because of happen because of PLI. And whenever a manufacturing ecosystem evolves, when one direct meaning when one industry evolves, there are assemblies of that industry which always come along with that industry. So for example, if Foxconn makes iPhone for Apples in China and Taiwan, then there are hundreds of ancillaries who work with Foxconn, who just follow Foxconn wherever they go, because Foxconn cannot exist or operate without them. So if some of these big companies like Samsung has already set up a plant in India, so when these companies move, they move along with their hundreds and thousands of their vendors, and it creates a much larger ecosystem. So our view is that if you take the PLI and the downstream effect of that, all of that can add comfortably anywhere close to like 2% of India's GDP. So, and then government has gone ahead and implemented labor reforms in India, again because the COVID wave and all of that, they pushed back the implementation of that by a few months. So it's pushed back to something, I think July or something. It was otherwise about to get implemented from 1st April. So I think government's focus on reforms remains steadfast in India. And some of the new reforms are phenomenal, especially the PLI one. And we will start reaping the benefits of the previous disruptive reforms, where we've taken all the pain and we are yet to see the benefits of that. Thirdly, pre-COVID, because of this, I touched upon the India's banking system. India's banking system had a huge problem where we had the elephant in the room in terms of the huge pile of NPAs that happened in the system, and which had completely choked India's banking system for almost 4 or 5 years. I think that problem now we have dealt with and solved with. So all the leveraged companies are either they've got acquired or they've got unwounded, and also the bank's balance sheet have been cleaned in that sense, if I would say, or they don't have such big issues on NPAs on their side, which effectively means when the new investment cycle begins, banks have the capability to lend. And lastly, after a gap of almost 10 or 12 years, we are seeing initial signs of revival in India's investment cycle, which was completely missing for the last 10 or 12 years. And we're already seeing corporates who have the capacity to invest are willing to invest. And as I said, now that the bank's balance sheet are cleaned up, banks have the ability to lend as well, which was not the case for the last 4 or 5 years. So a combination of all of this leads us to believe that, meaning our assessment is by 2025, India could actually reach 10% kind of a growth on its domestic GDP, which would be, I think, which is a double-digit growth is an aspirational growth for India. And we think confluence of all of these can actually take India to double-digit growth. Just to put things in context again, the last time India had double-digit growth was in 2010. So if we get there back in 2025, it will be 15 years since we would have had double-digit growth. And I think there's every reason for India to aspire for that, and probably much more, So the point I'm trying to make is that if you look at India's economy, even pre-COVID economy for the 2 or 3 years pre-COVID was not doing that in great shape. But I think all the problems that were holding back the economy in those 2 or 3 years, we have addressed all those problems. And on top of that, governments have started doing incremental reforms, which are very constructive. Combination of all of that and the revival of India's investment cycle, signs of which are green shoots of which are very aptly visible to us from where we sit and the way we look at businesses, and also in our conversation because we talk to so many companies, leads us to believe that India's growth will really accelerate, and India's growth in the pre-COVID world will also be much higher than what it was in the pre-COVID world. In the post-COVID world will be much higher than what it was in pre-COVID world for 4 or 5 years around and pre-COVID. And also what COVID has done is one more thing when it comes to India's manufacturing or India's strategic importance. People have somehow, global economies have realized that for some reason or other, China is not a reliable or trustworthy partner. And as a result of which, this whole China plus one strategy has become pretty global. All the Fortune 500 companies have their base in China, and China is so large and so much integrated into the world economy that you cannot do without China if you are a global company. But all of these companies want to have a second base outside of China, and which is where India clearly stands out. So in as much as India needs the world to accelerate its growth, Now, global companies and global economies also need India, because China Plus One has become a strategic priority for all the Fortune 500 or Fortune 1000 companies. They want to have a second base outside of China, and which should work in India's favor over the next 10, 15, 20 years. So combination of all of these broadly makes us feel very constructive on the outlook for the Indian economy. This year will be a year, this current financial year, just in April, will be a year of high growth, partly because of the low base of that year. The more important point I'm going to make is we are positive or constructive on growth outlook for India's economy, even beyond this year, because all of these reforms, as they start yielding results and start driving growth, some of this can be very long-term driver of India's growth. And as I said, our belief is that India's growth can actually hit 10% plus or 10% by 2025. Now, if you look at it in that context, then my view is there is no reason to be negative on equity as an asset class, because India probably, all of us understand that China is slowing down and China's economy will slow down even further. My own view is that probably by the end of this decade, let's say somewhere in the second half of this decade, by 2027 or 2030, somewhere there, China's growth will actually slow down to 2% or thereabouts, because by that time they would have become the largest economy in the world. And a 2% growth for economy, which is the largest economy in the world, will be pretty will be a pretty good growth, or a pretty solid growth, I would say. And so effectively that means that India will become the fastest growing economy in the world on a sustainable basis. And if that be the case, then I think there's every reason to be extremely constructive or positive on Indian equities. There's no reason you should not. Meaning, people think that equity is a risk. I've been saying this for the last 24 years of my career, and I still believe so, that the not investing into equity is a much bigger risk. Because no other asset class can beat inflation. All of us know where the fixed income yields are, and only asset class which can yield you healthy returns over a slightly more medium term to longer term is equities. So and the question around bubble and all that, I don't think so equities are in any sort of a bubble. Valuations might be stretched a bit, but they will remain so, because the one thing that has clearly changed pre-COVID and post-COVID is globally interest rates have fallen further, because central banks have just gone on in terms of buying bonds and expanding their balance sheet. So interest rates today are much lower than what they were in the pre-COVID world, which effectively means for the same asset or same set of cash flows, your valuation multiples have gone higher. And if India is going to be potentially the fastest growing economy and the most exciting economy from a global perspective over medium term to longer term, then all of us know that people all over the world would want to invest in India. So I'm not saying that Indian equities are cheap in terms of valuation. I think they are expensive. The point I'm going to make, friends, is that they're expensive and they'll remain expensive. You can buy Indian equities cheap only in the middle of a crisis. And one such crisis happened last year. But all of us know how difficult it is to gather courage and buy into middle of a crisis, right? Because we ourselves, all of us are shaken. And which is why they say equity is more about, investing is more about discipline than anything else.
Sure.
So the point I'm going to make is, valuations are expensive from an Indian equities perspective, but they will continue to remain expensive. Markets can correct short term. They can correct by, they're already down by 5-7% at the index level. They can correct by another 5-10%. I have no clue about that. What will happen to the market tomorrow, next 1 week, next month? I have no clue. My guess is as good as yours, and probably yours could be better than mine, I would say. But I know one thing, that you take a view which is, meaning generally, if you invest into equity, your view should be at least 3 years. But I'm saying you take a view which is 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 5 year, 10 year. Outlook on Indian equity remains pretty exciting. Globally, we have started a new growth cycle, and so is the case with India. And we are just, I think we've started a new bull market in equities. I firmly believe so. And this bull market is very young. We are just 1 year into this bull market. Bull market generally tend to last at least 5-7 years. Obviously, it depends on economic cycle, but they generally tend to last at least 5-7 years. So we've just finished 1 year of a bull market. Markets can correct, they can fall, they can go sideways, they can correct by 10-15%. But I don't see them crashing or in any sort of a bubble in any manner whatsoever. Our house view is, which we put out last year in August, September. We put out a view, and our view is that markets could be actually be 25,000 by 25. So that's one big note we had put out last year, that 25,000 by 2025. And this is not just for the heck of saying it, but it's obviously based on our own understanding and our research grounds up in terms of how all the some of the top 100 companies of India, how they will behave in terms of their performance over the next 4-5 years. Obviously, we have our own views on them. We do deep financial modeling on all of them, and our assessment of what their profits will be over the next 4-5 years. And if all of that plays out, then where could market potentially be? And our view is markets could actually be 25,000 by 2024-25. So all I'm saying is take a slightly more medium-term view. I'm very positive on outlook for Indian economy. And if that be the case, then there's no reason to be bearish or negative on markets. Short term, the next 1 month, 2 months, I have no idea. But if one were to look beyond that, then there's every reason to be extremely constructive or positive on Indian equities.
Sure.
So if you want, I can pause here.
Sure. So, Pankaj, thanks a lot. I think, it has been a very good, commentary on, how you see the market going forward. And with that, I think, this correction is basically an opportunity, as you rightly said. Now, I think, there are different aspects we kept in this, call. One is about the market. One, we would like to know more about you, because you had the best of the training possibly you could have had, after qualifying as a chartered accountant with rank holder and working with UTI. And then after that, groomed by Rakesh Ji Jhunjhunwala and the Ramdev Agarwal. And then, becoming the CEO of Axis Bank, where you manage billions of dollars, and also got the Best Fund Manager Award. Now, tell us a bit more about your learning as to, what we should, as, Benjamin Graham said that, what will happen in the market is not in your control, but how you control your emotions and your behavior is where you make money. So, we would like to understand a bit more on, the investing habits and principle of investment, what we should do as an investor in terms of the, the allocation of asset, and, what are the do's and don'ts of becoming a good investor.
I'm still very young in the profession, Kanhaiya, but I'm happy to share my experiences. I'm sure there are a lot of other seasoned investors, not only in India, worldwide, and there's a lot to learn. Unfortunately, investing is one such, it's a very humbling business, because every now and then you get challenged by markets, and markets keep surprising us. So it's one business where all of us have to keep eating a humble pie every now and then, because the market's always smarter than all of us. But I think now that you've touched upon this, I can share with you some of my firm or core beliefs, and if that helps the audience, I'll be very happy. One, friends, I firmly believe that, and I'm sure many of you understand this, no other asset class or a medium to long term can give us returns which can match returns for equity as an asset class. There could be, unless if you're a great real estate investor, you can do great there in terms of finding a particular asset and all of that. That's a separate issue, but all of us understand that real estate is not liquid. There could be asset classes like Bitcoins and all of that. And Bitcoin, by the way, has actually become an asset class. Though many people think it's a speculative this thing, but I think it's become an asset class and it will become bigger probably. But I have my own doubts about, I think it's an asset class which will be in vogue for the next 10, 15, 20 years. And it's all an outcome of what central banks are doing. But once central banks normalize, probably I'm not sure what's the future of Bitcoin, but that's a separate issue. The bigger point I'm trying to make is, traditionally, I firmly believe that the only asset class which can give you superior returns over a long period of time is equities. People and the behavior I've seen, and most of the audience here is Indians. So behavior I've seen is what usually happens with we as Indians is we buy real estate as a property and then we just own it for rest of our life. And we want to give it to our next generation, pass it on, because we don't sell them. If we sell one as real estate property, we buy another one and so on and so forth. and we feel very comfortable owning real estate. There are enough number of studies over a very long period of time, and not only in Indian context but in the global context as well, which are available. Anyone interested, I can share a lot of them, which shows that over a longer period of time, equity returns are far higher than real estate. So my first piece of advice to everyone, which I always tell and which I've been saying for the last 24 years, just like we buy real estate and then we don't sell for the rest of our life, we should get ourselves committed to invest into equities. Invest into equity and then just own for the rest of your life and just pass it on to your next generation. Yeah, don't think about equity as an opportunistic asset. The problem with equity is two things. One, it's very liquid. So the biggest advantage of equity as an asset class becomes its biggest handicap. And secondly, it's an asset class which is volatile. It is, it is susceptible to swings, and which is what makes people nervous. Your real estate assets also falls at times, either in absolute value or through correction in the real prices, where prices stay flat for a long period of time. But it's not because we don't get to see that prices every day, we don't get perturbed about it. And real estate is more tangible, where you can touch and feel, unlike equities. But always remember, equity is a growth asset. Okay, you buy a 3 BHK apartment in Dubai or in Bombay, anywhere, the 3 BHK after 20 years doesn't become 5 BHK. It remains 3 BHK. The price goes up. You invest into a business, you invest into let's say you invest into HDFC Bank when it got IPO'd in 97. It was a small startup bank, which now is the largest private sector bank in India and the third largest bank otherwise. So when you invest into equities, you're investing into a real business, which is run by a real set of people, and you're buying a growth asset. Obviously, there are certain rules and disciplines of investing if you have to get it right. But if you do all of that, then the outcome of that process over a period of 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years can just be mind-blowing, which we don't realize and we don't appreciate. So my first advice to everyone is, think about equities is a long-term asset class, and just stay committed to that over a long period of time. Yeah, equity is volatile, but that's the nature of the asset. That's the nature of the beast. So we have to get used to it. And rather than succumbing every time, getting panic and selling, every time you sell, there's someone else who buys. Yeah. Unfortunately, one principle I learned early days in investing is equity, unfortunately, is a very simple asset class. The problem is simple things are very difficult to practice. All of us like to do complex things. Equity, this is a simple principle is buy, buy low, sell high. So all of us know the fact that equity is a volatile asset class. Every few years, there'll be something or other will go wrong in some part of the world. India now is a large economy, among fifth largest in the world. Anything goes wrong in any part of the world, Indian equity markets will get impacted, irrespective of whether the Indian economy gets impacted or not. Instead of succumbing to a crisis, use that crisis or volatility to your advantage and use that crisis to buy equities rather than sell equities, like we do in a normal life, right? I'm sure all of you have, I have few friends in US where they, more often than not, when they want to buy something which is very significant in terms of value, they actually wait for a sale season. And when the sale happens around Black Mondays and all of that, they actually go and buy it. Yeah, and which is what we do, all of us do. When there's a sale in the mall, we go and buy. But when there's a sale in equity markets, when markets are low, instead of buying, we end up selling. So what we end up doing in equity market is very counterintuitive to do what we do in our life with all other things. So I think, which is what we call as irrational behavior. So I think what we do with our everyday life, we need to do with that with equities also, and behave rationally. When equities are low or prices are low, and they can be low or they can be a panic only when there's some crisis. Okay, so use that as an opportunity to buy into equities and then stay invested over a long period of time. The classic example. Thirdly, investing, unfortunately, is very simple. Just think about it. I'm sure there are a lot of businesses all of us can touch and feel on an everyday basis. The classic example, the most simple example is HDFC Bank. All of us as Indians, many of us or most of us deal with HDFC Bank in some form or other. Either we have deposits with them, or we have fixed deposits or a saving account with them, or we have taken a home loan or a car loan with them, or some sort of a thing. All of us know HDFC Bank is a great franchise. From the time I tell people, from the time we leave home and we get to a place of work, every day we see a few HDFC Bank branches. just think about it. People who, all of you, everyone who's had deposit with HDFC Bank, instead of that deposit, if you would have bought stocks of HDFC Bank and just kept that stock over the last 15, 20 years, the kind of wealth magnifier it would have had. Today, TCS, Infosys are the largest employers in India. We Indians are so skeptical about our own self and our own country that, but today 70% of these companies free float is owned by foreigners, because we don't have faith in ourselves, and foreigners have more faith on India and on Indians than we have on our own selves. So while Indians work, while they work at HDFC Bank or at TCS or Infosys, but the capital gains or wealth creation out of that goes to foreigners, because they own 70% or 75% of all of these large companies. So the point I'm trying to saying, one, treat equity as a strategic asset class. Have a slightly more longer term. You don't think about it as an opportunistic asset class for a 2-year, 3-year, or a 1-year, 2-year. Every time you get a crisis, that's a great opportunity to buy into equities. More importantly, I think all of us are very fortunate to be at this point of time in India, because I think India is and will go through one of its best growth cycle over the next 10, 15, 20 years. And the best way to participate in any country's growth cycle is by investing into great businesses in that economy or that ecosystem. And India is and will be going through such a cycle, in which case all of us are very fortunate to be, to be around at this point of time, to be able to do all of that in terms of investing and make the most of that, and to reap the benefit of that in terms of the capitalizing on the growth cycle of India. So, meaning these kind of opportunities do not happen very often in a country. US had one of the biggest bull markets ever in this history between 1980 to 2000, and which is when the baby boomers really grew up. So they had one of the most, they had the, a golden time between the 80s, after Japan peaked out in 83, and until 2000 we got hit by dot-com crisis, where US had a phenomenal growth cycle, and obviously they had a 20-year bull market in equities. Probably, who knows, I think India can have one such cycle, and if that be the case, then the best way to make the most out of a country's economic growth or prosperity is by equities and asset class. And so, meaning, I'm just trying to give some of my broad perspective in terms of how we should be approaching equity. And if you really believe in long-term India's growth story, then crisis will come and go. Every few years we'll have a crisis. So we had a 2008 financial crisis, we had a 2013 currency crisis, where Indian currency went for a toss, depreciated by something like 30% in a matter of 3 months or 4 months. And we had a COVID crisis. Before that, we had some of these mini crises, including a small financial crisis or sort of that in 2018, and so on, right? All I'm saying is, but none of these crises will change India's long-term growth trajectory. In fact, after every crisis, India has emerged stronger than what it was pre the crisis. So now, post-COVID crisis, I think India is relatively much stronger, because the world has realized that, as I said, they need India as a counter to China in a lot of other aspects, not only strategic, but even from economic perspective and many more things, though we are still very small in relation to where China is in terms of the current size and scale of the economy. But probably in Asia, when it comes to Asia, the way geopolitics and way the economies are poised, we are the only ones which can potentially think of standing up to China, probably not now, but maybe 10 years, 15 years out. So I think all I'm saying is have faith in India and have faith in equities and asset class. Once you can reconcile to these two things, I think everything else will fall in place. So I don't know if I've answered your question, but I just wanted to translate my conviction in India and my faith in equities to all of you guys.
Sure. No, that's very, very insightful, Pankaj. I think that leads me to my next question. You mentioned about HDFC Bank. We all believe in equity class, right? We believe in India's story, but we believe in it as long as the Sensex goes up. The moment it start correcting, it goes down. As you said, we go, we get to in the panic mode. Now, you mentioned about HDFC Bank. And, in the hindsight, it has been the perpetual compounder and multi-bagger. Now I had the, the benefit of you managing my wealth and, been able to, have some multi-baggers. So, Divi's, for example, was one of them, Persistent, Ramco, Tata Chemical. And so for, I'll tell you what I have experienced with you and how I relate to, and, the question which I have, I'm asking for the benefit of all of them is that, look, when you bought those shares and, we bought Divi's when the whole world was selling. We bought Tata Chemical when no one was talking about Tata Chemical. So first is, what you see in these companies which makes you buy. And the second is what makes you have that conviction to continue to hold. Many times the time have come when we reviewed and I used to tell, yeah, boss, ye to double ho gaya, bech dete hain. And you said, ki jaldi kya hai? And okay, next assessment pe dekhte hain, ya next review pe dekhte hain. So I think the most important in multi-bagger, one is identifying them. So what it takes and what you see in the stocks to find that, okay, this is going to be the next HDFC or the Tata Chemical or the Divi's. And how do you get that conviction and the discipline to hold on to it? Because हर stock में 20% gain भी आता है, 50% भी आता है, 100% आता है before it becomes a multi-bagger. So you are too tempted to book your profit at 20, 50 or 100. So how do you avoid that temptation and how that discipline comes?
So, Kanaya, okay, one on identifying stocks, see, that is what my team, we do all the time, and that is what I've been doing for the last 24 years, right? We keep looking at businesses, we keep meeting managements, we keep doing our research, and we meet so many people, and we keep meeting all these companies on a continuous basis and all of that. As we do that, we get to understand businesses. We tend to have a view on business. So, for example, I'll give an example. Now, take a classic example. I'll give you a case study. So, I think India mein we had 20 crore smartphone users who can use data in 2015. After Jio came, they made data prices have dropped by 90%. All of us know. I'm sure all of us are using Jio phone. And now India mein we have 80 crore smartphone penetration, 800 million as we call it. So the smartphone penetration, because data prices fall and the handset prices also fell. And now Jio is in the process, or they're working on a low cost 3G Android phone with Google, where they're talking about bringing to market a smartphone which can be like 5,000 rupees or 4,000, 5,000 rupees price point, which can really take data consumption to the remotest of village in India, because 4,000-5,000 phone they can afford. So now we know that data consumption, smartphone penetration in India has exploded, and all of this happened pre-COVID, and data consumption in India has shot through the roof. So pre-Jio, an average user was using in India about 2 GB or 3 GB of data. Now average Indian user is about 9 GB of data. So it has gone 4x in last 4 or 5 years. Now we have seen, for example, all how the internet stocks and the new economy stocks have done globally, worldwide, in US, Europe, and all of that. And now that there's a data explosion that has happened in India, and there's such a big consumer base, 80 crore smartphone users, right? Nowhere in the world except China. So we are the second largest smartphone penetration, second largest data consumers in the world after China and all of that. So which effectively means that the opportunity for internet businesses over the next 15-20 years in India is just mind-blowing, mind-boggling. Because India mein the internet economy is just taking shape. So far we have been used to the traditional way of doing business. Internet economy is just taking shape. So why I give this example is, likewise, when we talk about Divi's or Tata Chemicals, obviously when we look at businesses, we do research on those businesses. We try to look at what is the future of that business over the next 5 year, 10 year, 15 year, 20 year. What is the future of that business? And that in a way helps us to form a view in terms of the outlook on that particular business for the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And basis that, and this can be very well be done by, meaning a lot of this is commonsensical also. So just we maine bata diya, internet business in India will explode. It's a no-brainer. all of us, meaning ki next 10, 15, 20 years, internet businesses will explode in India. Now it's your ability to find the right business and buy into them, because while a lot of businesses will, in every industry, what happens is while a lot of companies succeed, a lot of companies fail also. And the success to failure ratio, not more than 5% companies in every business succeed. So in every industry, for every DV that has succeeded in contract research, there are 95 companies which have failed. So to be, once you get to know that industry is doing well, so you have to look at an industry where the growth prospects are strong or very good for the next. If I were to put a model around how to identify companies, I would say look for an industry where the growth prospects are very strong over the next 10, 15, 20 years. And then once you identify the industry, look for good companies which have good business model, which have good promoters or managers and competent people running the business, so that you as a minority shareholder will be treated fairly and there will be no corporate governance issues. And if they're competent people, hardworking people, then just when you buy equity into those companies, you have the opportunity to partnership with some of the best brains of that industry. And once you've got into that partnership, just lock yourself. If you buy Infosys, meaning once upon a time when it was run by Narayan Murthy, you got to do a partnership. By being a shareholder of Infosys, you got to do partnership with Narayan Murthy. Once you've got into a partnership with a great person, just lock that partnership, and just stay put with them. Because good companies and good people can also have some bad time, but eventually if they're good people and good companies, they will do well and they'll continue to do well over a long period of time. So when you're looking for companies which will do well in the future, look for companies, industries which have great growth prospects, and then within that look for good companies, good businesses, good people, good standards of governance, and so on and so forth. And I'm sure all of us with little bit of due diligence can figure out at least some of these things, if not all of those things. And once you've got invested into good businesses, then just stay invested in them for a reasonably long period of time. So I always say that as an investor, you should be lazy. Okay. So which effectively means don't buy easily, do a lot of research before you buy. Once you've bought, don't sell easily. Because once you bought a good business, just stay put with that business and stay with it. जस्ट लाइक हम लोग बिजनेस करते हैं, हमारा एक्चुअल जहां हम बिजनेस कोई एक डाउन साइकिल खराब आ गया तो हम हमारा बिजनेस को बंद नहीं करते हैं. वी स्ट्राइव दैट साइकिल, ride that cycle, and then strive for the next growth cycle in that. So think about your investment also as doing business, where ठीक है, अगर कंपनी अच्छी है, business अच्छा है, market stocks can fall because of bad market, or the company might not do well for a short period of time. But if you know the company is good longer term, just stick with that company and think about it as a business where you ride the downturn or a soft patch and strive to live with them or prosper with them over a longer period of time. So, the formula or the template is very simple. Unfortunately, every question you ask me about investing, the answers to that are very simple. The only problem is simple things are difficult to practice.
No, you're right. Pankaj, that's what I keep, a friend of mine asked me and I said, look, we all know he was patla hone ke liye kya karna hai, we all know how to, remain fit. But it's so difficult to do it, It's so difficult to eat the boiled food and it's so difficult to go for exercise every day morning. So it's all the habit, So all of us know, these principles which you mentioned. I think, many of us might have read some books. And like, we all know that, to remain healthy, what we should do. But then the hazards are in life is your own habits. So I think that comes with practice. And I think I've been fortunate enough to have the association with someone like you to guide me through that. And I remember when we first met after the global financial crisis, and I think that Nifty that time was around 7,000, 7,500. And that's when our association started. And I asked you both, what do you think of the market? And you said, 10,000 to easily ho jayega. And that, that conviction and the way you explained it to me made me, also so much have that conviction and, to invest together with you. So I'm sure, all of us will find that someone who can help us in doing that, investing. The last question I have, and then I'll open the floor for everyone to question. I started getting questions, chat messages from people that we also want to ask questions from Pankaj. So the last question, which I'm asking for benefit of some of my dearest friends on the call here. They enjoy trading. They enjoy trading and their long term is buying today and selling tomorrow. Or maybe buying today and selling in 2 weeks time or 3 weeks time. And every day morning, they need to know which stock to buy and which one to sell. So what's your advice is for the people like us who seek thrill in the market कि boss आज SGX Nifty में क्या हो रहा है, कल रात को Dow में क्या हुआ, and which stock to buy and sell. So what's your advice for us who still need that thrill?
देखो इसमें ऐसा अभी सब इंडियंस ही हैं, तो मैं थोड़ा अभी द क्वेश्चन यू आस्क्ड मैं अभी थोड़ा इसका हिंदी में जवाब देता हूँ. ठीक है. देखो, thrill is very good. All of us want thrill in life. Who doesn't want? Okay, and there are different kinds of and different magnitudes of thrill. All I'm trying to say is equities and investing is a serious, very serious instrument through which you can create serious wealth over the course of your life if you follow the discipline of investing and discipline of equities, and that can change life. Yeah. So all I'm trying to say is, for everything we do in life, every stream has its own discipline that needs to be followed. All I'm trying to say is, take equities and investing as a very serious asset class. Now, if you want to have thrill in life, you can use some part of your portfolio and keep playing around with it, because thrill cannot be a serious business. Okay. Your thrill means, as all of us know, that the only person who makes money is the broker. Because, and likewise, when you go to an amusement park for thrill, the person who, in return for the thrill we get in amusement park, the amusement park charges us some whatever fees or ticket price, right? So thrill is good. It's important. All of us need thrill and excitement in life. All I'm saying is, equities is not the only place where you can have thrill and excitement in life. There are many other places, and there are various other means and ways and means. So don't depend only on equities to get all your thrill and excitement in life. Secondly, if you still want to have thrill and excitement with equities, because it's fun, you can use 10-20% of your portfolio to keep doing that, knowing fully aware that you're having fun and you're having thrill. And it's not meaning, while you intend to make money, it's obvious that 99.9% of traders don't make money in life. So the odds are against you to start with. If you were to start a business, where I'll tell you the probability of you succeeding in a business, let's say you start a textile business or your chemical business, and if I tell you the probability of success is only 1%, you will think 100 times before starting the business. And if you are a rational person, then more often than not, you will not start the business. You will say, if success ke chances hi itne kam hai, to why waste time and energy, right? So likewise, I'm saying, when you're trading the markets, your probability of success is 0.1%. And that is based on statistics of traders globally all over the world. Okay, or it could be 0.2%, but certainly not more than that, because 99.7, 99.8, 99.9% of traders worldwide lose money. Okay, so you're right that when you're trading, you're doing it not for making money, but for having thrill and fun. So use some part of your portfolio to have thrill, but with the rest of your portfolio, have serious investing with a disciplined approach, because you can create serious wealth over a long period of time. And don't fritter that opportunity. While you have thrill with your money, just think about it. Do you have thrill with your health also? You don't experiment with your health, right? Because the consequences can be very severe for you. You don't try every now and then different kind of medicines with your health, or you don't eat something which you feel is not safe or risky and all of that, right? So all the precaution you take with your health, care and precaution you take with your health, please also take with your wealth also, because after your health, your second biggest wealth is your wealth. Yeah. So all I'm trying to say is, equity and investing is a serious business, and every business or every profession has its own rules and norms that needs to be followed, and so is the case with equities. So please follow that, and if you still want to have thrill and fun, use that with some part of your portfolio, but don't bet your house on that, because otherwise you will deprive yourself of creating wealth for yourself. And this is exactly the reason why everyone knows that HDFC Bank will do well, TCS will do well, Infosys will do well, but 74% of HDFC Bank, 70% of whatever, 65-70% of Infosys, again 65-70% of free float of TCS is owned by foreigners, not owned by Indians.
Yeah, sure. So look, thank you very much. And I saw a lot of smiles on, the Zoom whose videos are on. And I think this, the webinar I organized mostly for those dear friends of mine. I've been also privately telling them कि boss ये सब छोड़ो, अच्छा fund manager ढूंढो, उनको पैसे देते हैं, और yeah, otherwise even if you want to do it, sensibly, buy good stock and leave it, don't buy. So I hope if they take this one, message from this webinar, change some of the ways they do investing. I think the purpose of this webinar for which I organized it, I would be, feel that, I've done something for my friends. So with this, Pankaj, I'll open the floor for question. I have Dinesh asking me that he would like to ask a question from you. So I'll Dinesh, try and see if you can unmute yourself.
Yes, I can. Okay. Hi, can you hear me, Pankaj, everyone?
Sure, we can.
Okay. Thank you, Pankaj. I will just give a brief introduction about myself. I'm also from the finance background. I'm a chartered accountant, and I'm also I'm working with the Coca-Cola company for the last 10 years, based out of Dubai. Okay. So I mean, I'm not an active investor, I would say. So I'm a very passive investor, but for the thrill again. Sometimes I do the trading. So I mean, first of all, I would like to thank you for your nicely narrated story about India 25 by 25. Is like, I would say you are the great ambassador of the Indian economy. And when you are saying that Indian economy will achieve the highest double digit and or low or high single digit and low double digit growth. That is fascinating to me. I have a couple of questions for you. I mean, one thing is like, you look at the macros, and you identify the industry, and within that industry you identify the companies. What are the top three things comes to you in your mind, like, okay, these are the three things I cannot compromise on that for identifying any company or any multi-bagger? My second question is, you are a seasoned investor and you have created wealth for so many clients and the companies. My question is, did you ever identify the company which, I mean, did you went wrong, and what are your lessons, and how did you apply those learnings in your future in investing mainstream? That's it. These are the two questions from me. Thank you.
Sure. Sorry. So the first question was, sorry, can you just come back on the first question?
Yeah,
Sorry, I missed that.
Unmute yourself.
Yeah, can you hear me now? So my first question is, okay, you look at the macros, like you look at the macros of India, like, high single digit and low double digit growth. And, you identify the industry, then you identify the company. What are the top 2-3 things you look at before identifying any company? Okay, I want to go with this company with all in, or, I want to bet on this company. Which you don't compromise, basically 2-3 things, top 3 things you look at.
Okay, so essentially you're asking what are the top 2 or 3 things that we look at in a business before we invest into a business. So
Exactly,
obviously, as I said, we're looking for great companies. Okay, at the end of the day, and what makes a company is 3 or 4 things. Obviously, one is the business they are into, because if you have a excellent management, but if you have a bad business, then the management, however good they are, they'll be constrained by the limitations of the business. So when we're talking about great companies, we're essentially looking for great businesses. Great businesses are businesses which will do phenomenally well or will deliver. As investors, okay, there are different growths, there are different investment styles which exist all over the world. Different investors follow different styles, and there's nothing right or wrong, because in investing is a very broad discipline. As investors, we are growth biased investors, so we're always chasing growth and we're chasing high growth. So we're looking for growth companies and companies which can deliver good growth, high growth over the next 5, 10, 15 years, 20 years kind of a thing. And we're looking for great people, because the combination of great business and good people, when I say great people, that means people who are competent and people who are fair, where the integrity is not under doubt, and competent and capable people. So that's what makes great people. So combination of great business and great people makes great companies, you know. So essentially that is the combination that we're looking at before we invest into businesses. We want great businesses and we want a great set of people to run those businesses. And if you find that, then that really excites us. And then we obviously delve deeper in terms of looking at the nuances of the businesses and so on and so forth. So if you really ask me what are the 2 or 3 things we are always looking at, these are the things we're looking at. We're looking for great businesses and great set of people with high integrity and competence, capabilities, if I may call it. And if you can find that combination, then that really excites us. Second is, have we had company? Yeah, obviously. See, when we are investing, what are we trying to do? We are trying to take a call on the future, right? Because we buy today and hoping that we will stay invested in this company for 3 year, 5 year, 10 year, whatever. So we are taking a leap of faith on the future. The future is always full of uncertainty. Okay, so obviously there are things which work out, but obviously there are things in the future as they play out. There are things which don't work out. At which point of time we have to figure out. We go back to our investment hypothesis to figure out what was our investment case and where things are today. So what has worked and what has actually not worked, and why it has not worked. If we think that things have changed and our hypothesis doesn't remain valid, for some reason we have got it wrong, and that wrong can be for multiple reasons. There could be reason because the management team is not able to deliver. It could be because some government regulation changed after we invested, as a result of which the economics of the business have changed. Or let's say some businesses dependent on, let's say, oil, and oil price shot through the roof, and that changed the economics of the business permanently. So a lot of things can change. And if we think that change is permanent, and which is why the investment is not as exciting as it was perceived to be at the time we invested, or if the risk reward is not favorable, then we do exit those investments. There are so many investments which have failed for me. It would be naive to say that it's not the case. And obviously, every time we face a failure, we try to draw some lessons from it, so as to incorporate into our investment process and framework, so that hopefully next time we don't make the same mistake again. So failures will happen in investing, where some investments will not work, because we are dealing with future. And the future is uncertain, and the future is always evolving, because government regulations are changing, policies are changing, geopolitics is changing, businesses. Today, technology is disrupting a lot of traditional businesses. Ubers and Olas, for example, in the last 7-8 years have disrupted the traditional taxi industry. Today, Zomatos and Swiggies and Uber Eats in US are disrupting a restaurant, or Airbnb has disrupted the hotel industry. So technological disruption happens. And because of which a lot of things might not work or might fail. And if that happens, then we have to take cognizance of that. We have to, as I said, in equity, we have to eat a humble pie very now and often, and we have to accept a mistake, and then we just move on. So there are a lot of companies which I would have invested at some point of time and which have not worked.
Great. No, thank you, Pankaj. And I always say that, look, even these professional investors who have so much of experience and they do it full time, and still sometimes they get it wrong. Then for someone like us who are not full time into this business and trying to do it part time and risking our wealth, this is a huge risk which we take in terms of I don't know, even if it is 10-15% of our wealth, it is significant, for us to take risk. And it's better to take professional help, that may cost a small fee, but it gives us a huge protection. So, I mean, again, it's left for everyone to decide how they want to, but, the fact remains, everyone makes mistakes, like all of us, and they try to improvise on that. If there's anyone else who wants to ask question, please raise your hand, or you can unmute yourself and ask the question. So Krishnan, and next is Uma. Yeah, sure.
Thank you, Pankaj. Thank you, Pankaj, for your time. Thank you for giving a good brief, and you have been regular, speaker in our event, also in Abu Dhabi Chartered Accountant event. Thanks a lot for your time once again. Thank you, Kanya, for arranging it. My question to you is, what is your view on startup companies in India? So there are many startup funds who are startup investing in various startup companies in India. Well, see, basically they are talking about a return of a good return. Basically, they are investing. We are not investing directly into a startup company, but we are investing it through a fund. So what is your view on knowing that there is a good potential for India to grow in the startup business by 2025 or 2030? So what is your view on investing in startup funding in India? Which are all the big name in startup funding companies in India?
Good evening, Krishnanji. Pleasure always talking to you. See, startup game is very simple. Okay, see, when a company gets listed, it achieves some critical mass in terms of size and scale. So the probability of failure is low because they have achieved some critical mass. Startups, by their very nature, as the name suggests, are startups. They are prone to failures. So experience tells us, and there are statistics which tells us that 99% of startups fail. There are only 1% of startups which succeed worldwide. So even if Google succeeded, there were many other people who were competing with Google who failed. There used to be Netscape Navigator at some point of time. Even Microsoft could not compete with Google, right? And Microsoft, we know the Microsoft browser is they've completely lost this thing. And Netscape was there, and all of them lost out. So all I'm trying to say is, but if you get a successful startup, then the returns from that can be just mind blowing. But again, as I said, so I always believe a startup is like a lottery ticket. Chances कम है लगने का success, पर लग गया तो बहुत बड़ा पैसा बनेगा. So if you want, you can keep trying and playing that lottery ticket. If you succeed, the rewards will be phenomenal. But the probability of success for every one Google, as I said, which has succeeded, there are 99 who have failed. So there are 100 companies. You have to pick one company which will succeed. In India, I'm very happy that the startups ecosystem has become very robust in the last 5-6 years. So and I think that is how it should be, because people should experiment ideas. There should be enough capital, risk capital that should be available to these guys, because that is how inventions happen in economy. US is the home to all the inventions because they encourage startups, and there's risk capital which is available for anyone with an idea. There's capital available to experiment with that idea, right? Because people have made money there in startups, and they're willing to go back and put that money back into startups and keep experimenting with the idea, which is why Tesla's, PayPal, and be it a Google or Amazon, all of them happen in US. So hopefully, I think the Indian startup ecosystem will evolve. Hopefully, some point of time we'll reach a stage where we'll have innovations coming out of India also. But still some time away. So for time being, our startups are more about adopting ideas from the West, and which is not a bad idea. If US could do a Uber, then someone here copied the same idea and created a Ola, which is not bad, right? If they could do a Uber Eats there, then someone here did a Zomato, which is again not bad. If someone did a Airbnb there, then someone here did an Oyo, which is again not bad. So I'm saying which is not a bad idea, at least though we are copying them, but we are actually accelerating the growth curve for the Indian economy. So I think startups are good, provided you can find a successful one.
But I'm not talking about investing in a startup companies directly in India, but I'm talking about the people who are managing the fund, who analyze various companies, and they manage the fund for us and investing in various companies, in various startup companies in India. There we are putting, there is a risk element. The risk of capital is so high, but rather than putting it in one company where the risk of chances of success is very less, here the startup companies, startup fund management, they invest in multiple companies in India. That's what I'm asking. Anyway, it is right. What you're saying is right, because only 1% of the company will success, and the chances of failure is more in startup.
So
Yes.
if I may, Krishnan, if I may take this question. See, the thing is, if you are giving the money to a fund manager to invest in the startup in India, there are certain due diligence which you need to do in terms of the track record of the fund manager, what he has done in the past, how long, what kind of startup he's going to invest into. Is broadly what we can explain here is that your allocation to that fund manager or that asset class would be very less, or depend on, you know, how much risk you want to take. Because at the end of the day, and I'll be very honest with you, because we also run a small you know, tech startup fund here for the Middle East. It's very difficult to find the Google and the Microsoft, you know, I'll be very honest with you. We raised money, and then after you know, the you know, 6 months, we returned the money to the investor, because we couldn't find good startups to invest in the Middle East. Now it's probably maybe we didn't understand that, right? So you know, keep, I mean, as Pankaj explained, that your risk of losing your entire capital is very less when you invest in a publicly listed or you give money to a fund manager. They may underperform or outperform the index or Sensex or Nifty by, you know, a couple of basis points here and there, but they're not going to, you know, come after 5 years and say, look, I'm going to give you back 20 cents to the dollar because all the startups I put money. So you need to do your you know, the, in terms of the risk allocation, how much you want to give to those fund manager, and you need to do the due diligence, which, you know, in terms of the track record of the fund manager, what they have done, and so on and so forth. At the end of the day, the overall funds, and we have done a lot of studies which I will share with you, except for the in the US, you have a couple of venture fund managers who have done phenomenally well. Rest of the fund manager, even in the startup stage, for the investors, no one has delivered, you know, the significantly better return. Rather, it's the other way around. And that was the reason for us to stop that fund, because we didn't want to lose money for our investors. I think I can speak to you later on. You know, the
Fair
entire.
enough. Thanks a lot, Pankaj. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, Uma wants to ask the question, and after that, I think Amit wants to ask the next.
Yeah, but Kanaya, we'll have to wrap it up in 5 minutes. I have another call to move on to.
So guys, no need for introduction. Ask your question directly, and then let's.
5-6 minutes.
Hi Pankaj, thank you for your nice brief outlook for India for next couple of years. I just want to know that you are telling that phase 2 of Corona will come, and then maybe phase 3 and phase 4. My first worry that phase 3, phase 4 will be much more severe than phase 2. And if 10% approx, you are telling that 5 to 10% maybe Nifty can correct. So for on that correction, which sector we should look after, where we can find over the next 3 years horizon or 5 years horizon much more better return. I'm not asking individual stocks or sector outlook. I want to know which can outperform.
See this, if how a country will do in this phases of evolution of the virus now, clearly differs from country to country, because it's a function of how good a precaution those people in the country are taking, how good is the healthcare system of the country, and so on and so forth. So in some countries, including US, the number of infections in phase 2 of the wave were higher than phase 1. But in some countries, the infection in phase 2 was lower than phase 1. So there is no straightforward answer to it, because how countries will, how bad the virus will be a function of, you know, how this every country is positioned in terms of their healthcare infrastructure, in terms of how much precaution people are taking, and so on and so forth. So in some countries where phase 1, Korea phase 1 they did very badly, but they screwed up in phase 2 and phase 3. So जहाँ पे infections phase 1 में Korea was the leader, they were the least impacted, but phase 2 और phase 3 में वहाँ पे भी cases काफी बढ़ गए थे. But now phase 4, I think things are very much under control in Korea, South Korea. So it really depends from country to country in terms of अभी अक्टूबर नवंबर में इंडिया में हम लोग कितना प्रिकॉशन लेंगे और कैसे हम डील करेंगे, वो हमारे ऊपर डिपेंड करता है, राइट. वायरस तो ये देखता नहीं है ना कि भाई कौन है क्या नहीं, वो तो अपना काम करता है, स्प्रेड करता है. तब तक हमने कितना वैक्सीनेशन कर दिया, कितना हम ये करेंगे, उसके ऊपर डिपेंड करेगा. सो दैट्स आंसर टू योर फर्स्ट क्वेश्चन. सेकंड, मैं मतलब सेक्टर्स बता दूंगा, पर उससे आपको कोई फायदा नहीं होगा. फिर भी आपने पूछा तो मैं बता दूंगा. आई थिंक आई
find out the leader from the sector. So
IT and technology we are very bullish on. Pharma we are very bullish on. If you ask me, I'm very bullish on autos. तो ये सब सेक्टर्स पे हम लोग काफी बुलिश हैं. वी वेरी बुलिश ऑन रिटेल. ठीक है. तो ये सब सेक्टर्स में आई एम वेरी बुलिश, टेक अ 3 year 5 year व्यू, वेरी बुलिश ऑन ऑल द सेक्टर्स। ठीक है।
Last question, Pankaj, from Amit, and then you can
Take this last question and then we close.
Thank you, Pankaj, for your time. I'm directly coming to the question. So actually, I have 2-3 questions, but all are interrelated to each other. As you said about when you are looking for the company, you look for the management. How good are the management and all. But the one thing I wanted to tell, when you talk to the people, they always say good about themselves. And all of us know, I don't wanted to say any name, there are so many management who is not good at all, not ethical at all, and where the share prices are. All of us knows. Second thing I wanted to go, everybody says keep stop loss, keep stop loss, keep stop loss. If you'll not keep stop loss, you will be in the big mess. But in case of the, when we are talking about the long term, there's a plus, ups and downs will come. I'm definitely sure that the stop loss will also trigger if you will not put it. So how you will handle? Third thing people say about the multi-baggers, less than 1% shares are the multi-bagger, and 99 more than 99% makes you bigger. So how you will know, how you know kab tak rehna hai, kab tata bye bye karna hai, and when you will stuck badly with any stock, how to exit?
चलो आपके 4 सवाल उनका फटाफट जवाब दे देते हैं मेरे को, क्योंकि मेरे को भागना है, मेरा एक दूसरा कॉल है, आई एम ऑलरेडी रनिंग लेट। हाँ, तो क्वालिटी ऑफ मैनेजमेंट, तो वहीं थोड़ा सा एक्सपीरियंस की, आई एग्री विथ यू कि it's on the face every person or every management might look good, and which is where the experience and the skill set comes into place. There are something called, what we call in our language or in our this thing, there are rogue management or managements who are not fair, and these kind of people exist all over the world, right? So India is not, why blame India for that? तो all over the world है ना, US में भी हो गया, आर्की गॉस हो गया, उससे पहले अभी थोड़े दिन पहले आया था, वो एक्सपायर हो गया बेचारा, द बिगेस्ट हेज फंड स्कैम जो हुआ था 2008 में, बनी, तो बनी एक्सपायर्ड जस्ट नाउ few weeks back. तो ये तो होता रहेगा सब जगह, because human beings are there are people who are greedy. Some people take a straightforward path to creating wealth or making money. Some people take different paths and all that. So we have to guard against that, and which is where the experience and skill sets comes into place. कि how do you judge and assess कि जो मैनेजमेंट बोल रहा है वो सही बोल रहा है कि नहीं बोल रहा है, तो उसके लिए थोड़ा सा एक्सपीरियंस की जरूरत है, थोड़ी अंडरस्टैंडिंग की जरूरत है हमें, कि हम पहचान सकें उसको, उसी को एक्सपीरियंस बोलते हैं। कि भाई बोलने वाले तो सब बोलेंगे, हमें उनको पहचानना है कि वो जो बोल रहे हैं वो सही है कि नहीं, हम उसको ट्रस्ट कर सकते हैं या नहीं ट्रस्ट कर सकते हैं, उसी वही एक्सपीरियंस, एक्सपीरियंस वही आता है। सो दैट इज अ मैटर ऑफ एक्सपीरियंस एंड जजमेंट, आई वुड से। कोई साइंस
but so that experience gets the other way also many times. I don't want to say the name, there are the many names, big names, but anyways, let's move.
That's the reason, Amit, I keep saying it's better, give bulk of your wealth to be managed by professional. And because I think we are ill-equipped, which management comes and meets with us, who is going to give us the appointment. For us to know a management is, you can only attend the earning call. That's not going to, as you rightly said, if you talk to them on the phone, they will always say that they are the best management. So it's as Pankaj said, it's better done by the people who are doing full time, and it comes with the experience. I'm sure Pankaj के सर पे जो बाल गए हैं ना, वो ऐसे ही नहीं गए, वो काफी मैनेजमेंट को उसने देख के काफी चीजें समझी है, तो it comes with the experience. So I'll let Pankaj take the next one. What
Okay.
you see? So in the interest of the time.
सेकंड इज, आपने पूछा था स्टॉप लॉस पे। हाँ, तो जब हम एटलीस्ट हम लोग, मैं हमारा बता सकता हूँ, अभी investing is something where there are different people follow different path, principles, policies, rules. There is nothing absolute right or wrong in investing. There are always gray areas, shades of grays around that. As far as our business is concerned, because we are fundamental investors, we don't follow stop losses. Because हम कोई स्टॉक में नहीं, हम जब कोई स्टॉक खरीदते हैं तो हम कोई स्टॉक नहीं खरीद रहे हैं उसका कि एक भाव आया तो ले लिया, एक भाव आया तो ले लिया। हम कोई बिजनेस में ओनरशिप राइट खरीद रहे हैं। मैंने इन्फोसिस का शेयर खरीदा है तो मैंने इन्फोसिस में ओनरशिप राइट खरीदा है। इन्फोसिस का भाव कल गिर सकता है विदाउट एनी, इन्फोसिस में कुछ गड़बड़ नहीं हुई, कल कोरोना क्राइसिस हो गई, इसमें इन्फोसिस क्या गलती है? तो आप इन्फोसिस का स्टॉक बेच दोगे, आप इन्फोसिस पे अपना गुस्सा क्यों उतार रहे हो? इन्फोसिस ने थोड़ी कोरोना किया, ठीक है, मैंने इन्फोसिस के साथ पार्टनरशिप किया है। अब कोरोना हो गया, चाइना ने कोरोना किया या किसने भी किया दुनिया में, उसका गुस्सा आप इन्फोसिस पे, उसका स्टॉक गिर गया क्योंकि किसी को बेचना था, पर इसमें इन्फोसिस की क्या गलती है? इन्फोसिस कंपनी ने तो कुछ गलत नहीं किया ना। तो अगर मैं इन्फोसिस का शेयर होल्डर हूं तो मैं इन्फोसिस क्यों बेचूंगा? जस्ट बिकॉज स्टॉक गिर गया बेच दूंगा? तो ये तो फिर उसके लिए तो फिर आपको है ना, मतलब क्या बोलते हैं, किसी प्रोफेशनल की जरूरत नहीं है ना, वो आप खुद ही कर लो, फिर वही तो करते हो सारे टाइम। सब लोग 99% लोग वही कर रहे हैं, भाव गिर गया बेच दो, बढ़ गया ले लो। फोन ऑफ फ्रेंड करके 4 फ्रेंड को फोन करो, सब फ्रेंड 5-5 टिप दे देंगे और फोन फ्रेंड करके और उसमें से इन्वेस्ट कर दो। उसका आउटकम क्या होता है हम सबको पता है, समझे ना? तो हम लोग स्टॉप लॉस में नहीं बिलीव करते, बट आई एम नॉट सेइंग इट्स राइट और रॉन्ग, बिकॉज डिफरेंट पीपल फॉलो डिफरेंट फिलोसफी, सो वी डोंट फॉलो स्टॉप लॉस, राइट? आपका थर्ड क्वेश्चन था, क्या था? 1%
So we are not following the stop loss. So 99% companies are make you bigger, and less than 1% company is a multi-bagger. So you invested for the long term, 99% chances is that can be turned into the make you bigger. So that's why I told you everything is interrelated to each other. So that's why sometimes people say go for the long term. I'm like any ATAG shares. You all of us knows what is the value for today. Most of the PSUs.
तो
And
ये
how
भी
to, when you stuck, how to exit.
तो ये भी आपका सही है। फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल आपने जो बोला वो स्टेटमेंट ऑफ फैक्ट है कि 1 to 2% कंपनीज बिकम मल्टी बैगर, 1 to 3% जो भी है, एंड 95-97% कंपनीज फेल और दे डोंट डिलीवर whatever the desired return, expected return, जो भी जिसको आप बोलते हैं they make you beggar, whatever, ठीक है? तो ये स्टेटमेंट ऑफ फैक्ट है पहली बात तो, ठीक है ना? अब इसीलिए आपको, क्योंकि आपकी वेल्थ इन्वॉल्व है, आपको कोई एक्सपीरियंस्ड पर्सन की जरूरत है कि वो, सो इक्विटी इज अ रिस्क एसेट क्लास, ठीक है? लाइफ में वो क्या बोलते हैं ना, हमारे इंग्लिश में एक सेइंग है, देयर इज नो फ्री लंच। सो अगर इक्विटी में हाई रिटर्न है तो हाई रिस्क भी है, तो वो रिस्क को मैनेज करना है। इसीलिए वो 95 या 97% कंपनी में हम नहीं इन्वेस्ट करें, इसीलिए हमें कोई एक्सपीरियंस प्रोफेशनल की जरूरत है। आप खुद कर सकते हैं तो कीजिए, नहीं तो आप किसी म्यूचुअल फंड को दे दीजिए। बॉम्बे में, इंडिया में 6000 स्टॉक लिस्टेड है, पर म्यूचुअल फंड के पोर्टफोलियो में तो 50 स्टॉक है ना, तो उसने अपना 1% स्टॉक सिलेक्ट कर लिया 6000 में से, और वो 60 स्टॉक का पोर्टफोलियो आपको दे रहा है। तो म्यूचुअल फंड भी वही बोल रहा है जो आप बोल रहे हो कि 99% स्टॉक वो है जो भी है, नहीं होंगे, 1% बनेंगे, और इसलिए उसने वो 50 स्टॉक का पोर्टफोलियो बना के दिया आपको। तो आप किसी एक्सपर्ट को दे दो। आप जब बीमार होते हो तो आप अपनी मर्जी से दवाई नहीं खाते हो ना, डॉक्टर की एडवाइस से खाते हो ना। तो वैसे यहाँ पे भी किसी एक्सपर्ट को दे दो ना, क्योंकि आपके बस का नहीं है ये, अनलेस यू आर फुल टाइम इनटू इट, है ना? तो वो बात सही है। इसीलिए म्यूचुअल फंड के पोर्टफोलियो में 50 स्टॉक होते हैं, 500 स्टॉक नहीं होते हैं, क्योंकि वो भी म्यूचुअल फंड आपको यही बोल रहा है कि भाई ये 50 स्टॉक या 100 स्टॉक हैं जिनमें रिटर्न बनेगा, बाकी 6000 स्टॉक को भूल जाओ आप, ठीक है? दुनिया क्या कर रही है उससे कुछ फायदा नहीं है, आप ये 50 या 60 स्टॉक रखो। तो जो आपने बोला वो एकदम सही है, और इसीलिए अगर आप खुद कर सकते हैं फुल टाइम तो कीजिए, वरना किसी म्यूचुअल फंड को या किसी उसको दे दीजिए। मतलब मेरा एडवाइस ये, जो आप अपनी क्योंकि वो सबसे बड़ा काम वही है, वो 95 को कैसे अवॉइड करें, ठीक है ना? तो अभी वो अनिल अंबानी हो गया तो ठीक है ना, वर्ल्ड ओवर सब बिजनेस फेल तो होते हैं ना। अगर बिजनेस फेल हुए, किसी ने कोई फ्रॉड नहीं किया, तो वो तो ठीक है, बिजनेस फेल होंगे ना, सब जगह फेल होते हैं, यूएस में भी होते हैं, यूरोप में भी होते हैं। आपके दुबई में क्या, वो अरबाज कैपिटल क्या था, अरबाज या कौन सा था वो,
अब्राज,
अब्राज, तो इट वाज वन ऑफ द बिगेस्ट फंड्स टू फेल। तो फेलियर तो सब जगह होंगे, ये तो गिवन है ना भाई। नहीं होगा तो फिर तो सब लोग ही कमा लेंगे ना इक्विटी में, वही तो बात है ना। एंड आपका लास्ट क्वेश्चन था व्हेन टू एग्जिट। नहीं, हाउ टू एग्जिट इज वेरी सिंपल, बेच दो, हो गया एग्जिट। क्वेश्चन इज व्हेन, हाउ तो बहुत सिंपल है, उठा के बेच दो, हो गया। हाँ, क्वेश्चन इज हाउ तो बहुत सिंपल है, एक फोन करो ब्रोकर को, एग्जीक्यूट कर दो, हो गया, एग्जिट हो गया। व्हेन टू एग्जिट इज अ मोर क्वेश्चन। सो व्हेन टू एग्जिट इट डिपेंड करता है, मतलब अभी अगेन उसमें भी कोई देखिए, इक्विटी में कोई थंब रूल नहीं है। अगर थंब रूल होता, कोई किताब होती जिसमें सारे रूल लिखे होते, तो फिर तो सब लोग वो पढ़ के एग्जैक्टली वही फॉलो कर लेते और सबका बिहेवियर सेम होता ना। इक्विटी मार्केट एवरी टाइम जब आप इक्विटी में कोई ट्रेड कर रहे हैं, तो जब आप बाय कर रहे हैं तो कोई सेल कर रहा है ना, तो दोनों में से एक ही जन सही है ना। जब आप सेल कर रहे हैं कोई और बाय कर रहा है, बिकॉज पीपल हैव डिफरिंग व्यूज, which is why there is a market. Now, if everyone has the same view, then there will be no market. For every seller, there is a buyer. For every buyer, there is a seller, and which is why there is a market. So obviously, there are different opinions, and someone will go right and someone will go wrong. right? So again, when to exit, it really depends on your what is your thought process, what is your time horizon, वो business किस समय कहाँ है, किस स्टेज पे है, वो business का future क्या है, मार्केट में प्राइस क्या है, वैल्यूएशन क्या है, मतलब इसका अभी वन लाइन आंसर नहीं है, मतलब ये जो
नहीं,
आप
I'll give you the example. Let's suppose I bought a
when to sell के ऊपर ना, मतलब जो आपने सवाल पूछा ना, ये बहुत गहरा सवाल है, इसके ऊपर दुनिया के कम से कम 100 ऑथर लोगों ने 1000 बुक लिखी है और उनकी पूरी लाइफ उन किताबों पे चल रही है, यू नो। तो ये ऐसा, मतलब ये तो आपने वो गीता का सवाल पूछ लिया है, मतलब इसके ऊपर पूरी गीता लिखी हुई है और हर बार लिखते हैं लोग, मतलब कि व्हेन टू सेल, मतलब ये बहुत बड़ी चीज है, बहुत बड़ा सवाल है, हजारों ऑथर्स की वर्ल्ड वाइड इसके ऊपर रोजी रोटी इसी पे चल रही है कि उन्होंने इतनी किताबें लिखी है इसके ऊपर, जो पूरी दुनिया में लोग पढ़ते हैं। ऑब्वियसली मैंने भी कम से कम 15-20 किताब पढ़ी होगी व्हेन टू सेल के ऊपर, ठीक है ना। तो इसका कोई एक आंसर नहीं, मैं आपको ये बोलना चाह रहा हूँ,
No,
इसका
I got your point.
एक आंसर
I
नहीं
got
है।
your point. I got your point.
So
Chalo,
friends,
thank you.
I'm sorry, I'm really run out of time already. 10 minutes late.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Pankaj. Allow me just 2 seconds. I think, first of all and the last of all, thanks a lot for your time, and also for extending the time for us to, have everyone have the benefit. And for the people who are interested to, discuss on, Pankaj manages his PMS company is known as Renaissance, and they're doing exceedingly well. Bulk of my wealth is managed by them, for full disclosure. And part of money I keep it myself for trying to see if I am right or wrong in the market. But I don't play with a lot of money myself. So if any of you are interested to professionally engage with Pankaj or wants to know more about his fund and product, I have all of yours email addresses, so I will circulate that to you. Any of you are interested, then I'll connect you with Pankaj, and then you can take the discussion forward. So that's one thing which I would like to do, and I hope it was a good session for all of you. You found it useful. We tried to, and Pankaj has given his heart out to tell you everything which practically he could have said in 1.5 hours. So thanks a lot, Pankaj, for guiding us all.
Fantastic. Thank you all. Thank you, Kanaya, and thank you all for your time. I appreciate that. Thanks a lot. We'll catch up with you guys some point of time again. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.